has no plans of suspending the deployment of OFWs to Kuwait.
With this gruesome case, the Department of Migrant Workers is considering a review of the 2018 bilateral labor agreement with Kuwait.
Marami na ho talagang pang-aabuso na ginagawa itong mga amo nitong ating mga OFWs. That's why I want to recommend to the Department of Migrant Workers to ban our OFWs from working in the state of Kuwait.
Migrante Philippines Chairman Arman Hernando noted that the bilateral labor agreement between the Philippines and Kuwait has already lapsed.
Nung binasa ko yung agreement, 4 years lang ang effectivity, so supposedly expired na siya last year. Kaya tignan namin na nag-negotiate ba ng terms ang Kuwait at ang Pilipinas.
Julie Biranara was not the first Filipino to be killed in Kuwait. There were others in the past, all of them murdered. It still happens to the point that OFW Advocacy Group Migrante Philippines says it could be time to reconsider our ties and agreement with Kuwait, at least until the Gulf state can ensure the protection of Filipino workers. We discuss all of that in this episode of The Chiefs. Chiefs, ako po si Robbie Alampay. Kasama po natin ngayong gabi via Zoom, Ami Pamintuan, Editor-in-Chief of the Philippine Star. Ami, good evening.
Good evening. Happy Wednesday.
Ami, by now people have heard of yung mga nag-crash na aeroplano, but I don't want to go there. I want to talk about this big story with General Durante, former head ng PSG. What do we know pagdating dito sa kaso ni Yvonne Chua Plaza?
Incumbent pa siya, ha? He's still the brigade commander, no? At kasama niyang na-charge. Siya daw yung mastermind at kasamang charged about 6 of his men, including the deputy brigade commander. Ano ba yun?
For those who are just tuning in and getting this story, quick recap because this is obviously a very big story.
Yes. Well, nung April kasi nagkaroon na yun ng kontrobersya, no? Na nag-post si the victim, who is a model and businesswoman in Davao. Nag-post siya na binugbog daw siya, tinuro niya, pinangalanan talaga niya, si General Durante. And ngayon, biglang namatay, na murder right in front of her house. Merong video na unan at na-identify ng army probers and police probers yung mga nandun na nakasakay sa motorsiklo. So ayun, pinangalanan ngayon and they were charged with murder and Durante was charged as the mastermind.
Ulitin lang natin yun. General Durante was tagged as the mastermind. General Durante of the Presidential Security Group tagged as the mastermind, and the police presented a whole matrix showing basically maraming mga sundalo essentially brought in, di ba? May mga sarhento doon brought in as part of the strike force that went after Miss Plaza.
Puro mga yun na nga, dahil kinausap na ni Durante yung deputy niya at yun na nag-issue ng detailed instructions to murder. At ang description ng mga probers, it's a crime of passion.
The presentation kanina by the police said, I mean, they're pretty confident in what they have. They have a motive and they have witnesses and people coming forward, say supposedly admitting and pointing to Durante. But this is obviously a story that will continue, that we will continue to monitor. In the meantime, we'll pick up on something that we discussed yesterday, itong death of another OFW in Kuwait. And the larger questions is it's bringing up, because Ami, if I remember yesterday, kausap natin ng migrante, they were saying that one of the things we have to look at here is nag-lapse na ang agreement natin with Kuwait.
4 years lang daw yung agreement, tapos na raw.
So anyway, what might all of that mean? We'll be talking about that later on. We'll take a quick break. We'll talk to our first guest after this breather. Please stay with us. The Chiefs will be right back. After the gruesome murder of another OFW in Kuwait, what's government's next move? Let's hear it from Department of Migrant Workers Undersecretary Hans Leo Kakdak. Good evening, Yusek Kakdak. Welcome po to the Chiefs.
Good evening, Sir Robbie, Miss Ami, and to the Chiefs. Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat.
Sir, before we get to the larger implications and impact on how we could be dealing with Kuwait and vice versa, we wanted to get some updates on the case, of course, of Julie B. Ranara. Ano po bang latest na nalalaman natin sa kaso na to at sa investigasyon?
Well, we know that the investigation is ongoing and that a public prosecutor from the Kuwait government is involved. And the charge is murder. And the accused is the 17-year-old son of the employer of deceased OFW Jollibee Ranara. And we also know that there are juvenile court or juvenile process or processes being applied in this case as the accused is a minor. And that we are braced to receive the findings of the public prosecutor very soon. And there's no question that we're seeking justice here. And we are looking forward to this case moving forward towards a case filed in court to bring the perpetrator to justice.
Sir, very quickly, what are the differences and the implications of the suspect being a minor? What are the fundamental differences in the juvenile system relative to the regular criminal justice system in Kuwait?
Well, at this stage, I wouldn't venture to speculate. I am not an expert in Kuwaiti law. However, we do know that the juvenile processes are being applied or will be applied to him. So my advice, my recourse at this stage is to await the findings of the prosecutor. It would be difficult to speculate at this stage as it may raise some expectations that may not happen.
Okay.
Yusek, do we know at this point kung ano na yung motive? Kasi brutal yung pagkakapatay, no? Apart from, well, sabi nila there was sexual and physical abuse, sinunog pa. Do we know kung ano nang dahilan kung bakit pinatay?
Okay, we do have information along these lines, but in order to protect the sanctity of the proceedings and also to respect the dignity of the family and the OFW Ranara, I would uphold the current investigative processes that are going on. And again, my advice at this stage is just to await the official findings from the prosecutor.
Well, in the meantime, what types of assistance are you providing any assistance at all to the family of Julie B?
Well, Secretary Susan Toots Ople, upon hearing of the news, her first recourse was to find a way to reach the family. And in such a short time, she made her way to the home, to the place of residence of OFW Ranara, to meet the mother, to meet the father, and the 4 children, and also the husband of OFW Ranara, as well as the siblings, and had assured them of their 2 most significant pleas at this stage, which is justice and the repatriation of her human remains. So the matter on the wheels of justice turning in Kuwait, as I mentioned, are moving ahead. We have, of course, the embassy in Kuwait and our labor attaché monitoring the proceedings. There is an embassy appointed lawyer, by the way, also assisting us. And as for the matter on repatriation, we know that this is also being arranged and that OFW Ranara will be home soon. Now, there is a right time for the benefits to come in, and we're working with OWA Administrator Arnel Ignacio to arrange for the proper death and burial benefits and assistance to the 4 minor children left behind.
Sir, yesterday kausap namin ng migrante. They did note that after the death of Joanna Demafilis, that in 2018 we did enter into a bilateral labor agreement with Kuwait. But they were saying na 4 years lang yon, and it's effectively they were saying nag-lapse na yung agreement na yon. Does that have any implications for what we could be discussing, what we should be discussing with Kuwait, given this latest tragedy as well?
Well, Secretary Toots definitely puts that agreement, which expired in May 2022, but was automatically renewed, by the way. There's an automatic renewal clause. But Secretary Toots is putting the review of that agreement, revisiting that agreement on the table. And in addition to this, she is asking us, she has tasked myself and Undersecretary Bernard Olalia to look into heightening or tightening safe and ethical recruitment standards for domestic workers to Kuwait. We know, of course, that the bilateral labor agreement was brought on by 2 sensational cases, the Demafilis and Villavende cases in 2018 and 2019. And so we know that the protective mechanisms, measures then, during the Duterte administration, were heightened, were intensified, such as tighter protective measures in the standard contract, the proper provision of food and humane working conditions, keeping the passports or giving the passports or not confiscating the passports of OFWs as well as their cell phones to be in the possession of their OFWs. So things like those guarantees are in the contract. But once again, we will engage the Kuwaiti side on a thorough review of all these provisions and maybe even more, because we definitely want to heighten protective measures to further enhance the safety and protection of our OFWs in Kuwait.
Sir, to clarify, if the agreement does already make clear that among the safety and security matters there is OFWs get to keep their passport, is that effectively addressing the kafala system? Or are there other things to consider at this point on addressing, if not the kafala system, the kafala culture perhaps, as it bears down on our OFWs?
Well, kafala essentially is a sponsorship system which ties a worker to a particular sponsor that is named in the worker's visa. And in the context of a domestic worker who is distressed, kafala can have adverse effects. It may be difficult, for instance, for a domestic worker to transfer from one employer to another. It may be difficult for a worker to come home when the employers or sponsor or kafil, as they call it, so refuses. Now, over the years, of course, this was put on the table. This was discussed in the 2018 negotiations. And over the years, at least in the last 3 or 4 years, we have seen actually an easing of the exit visa requirements with respect to OFWs seeking to come home. For instance, it's a lot easier now in Kuwait for the Kuwaiti government to impose the exit visa upon the employer, even as the employer refuses to accede to or authorize the issuance of such an exit visa. So we have seen an easing. We have seen attempts to address the adverse effects of kafala. But that said, that doesn't prevent us at all from raising further protective measures, especially tightening safe and ethical recruitment standards, which includes, by the way, I need to emphasize this because Secretary Toots gives very high importance to this matter, and that is on the matter of ensuring that only ethical and clean record or clean recruitment agencies with a clean record or track record shall be allowed to deploy or recruit workers for Kuwait.
Yusek, we discussed that yesterday with the chairman of Migrante. I asked him, hindi ba pwedeng ma-screen ng maayos ang mga recruiters so that yung mga violators, yung nagkaroon na ng mga ganyang record, cannot return to the business. sabi niya, it's actually so easy daw to just change the name of the recruitment agency kasi wala naman daw central database for all these names. Pwedeng sumali lang sila, mag-merge sila with some other company and tuloy-tuloy pa rin yung operations. So how do you intend to address this problem?
Well, over the years, measures such as making sure that we have a proper list of officers and owners and investors in a particular recruitment agency are in place. So there is a database, we know who they are, but of course, we need to run after so-called dummies or people who pretend to be owners but actually are just standing in for somebody who shouldn't be an owner, such as the previous violator, repeat offender, or a foreigner. So these efforts are undertaken with law enforcement. There are investigative efforts that should be undertaken, and Secretary Toots has ordered all the relevant units within the Department of Migrant Workers to review the work that has been done along these lines over the last few years and to strengthen our partnership with law enforcement so that we can crack down on these dummies and all entities that fly under the radar and perform these illegal acts.
So right now, I understand you are going after, well, at least you are investigating the recruiter of Julebi, no? Can you give us more details about this investigation, about what's happening now?
Well, Undersecretary Bernard Olalia has been tasked to do this. It will be first and foremost along the lines of finding out whether OFW Jollibee, that's how her mother pronounces her name, has been properly monitored, because there is a mandate to monitor the well-being of OFWs. Just today, I reviewed the monitoring record of the recruitment agency, and it's not exactly stellar. They had some shortcomings or omissions with respect to monitoring Jollibee, who was deployed last July. And these matters will be addressed in the investigation being undertaken by Undersecretary Bernard Olalia, who handled our enforcement arm in the Department of Migrant Workers.
What's the capacity of our government, of our missions in different countries, and of the DMW and the Philippine government in general? We know it sounds really big, but this is precisely the question. Our capacity to monitor, as impossible as it sounds, all our OFWs, at least for their security, for their safety. We have millions of Filipinos in so many countries, in practically every country in the world. Can you speak a bit on the capacity and how the need for that capacity has grown over the decades, and where we are, in all honesty?
Well, it's quite a challenge. To give an idea, around 10 to 15 and even 20,000 are deployed to Kuwait every year. Physically, the challenge to visit each and every household where an OFW Kasambahay works will be a challenge. But we are aided by the technology these days. So there is a reportorial requirement, for instance, for recruitment agency to report on the well-being of a deployed OFW every month. And there is an electronic database for all these reports. The tracking that I did this morning was just basically to check our database of monitoring reports. And there I dug up all the monitoring reports sent by the recruitment agency of OFW Ranara. We have text messaging, we have social media to aid us in terms of how to get in touch with our OFW. So technology has made this easy. Also, to reach out to our Kuwaiti government counterparts is a little easier with the bilateral labor agreement and, of course, with technology. Myself and Administrator Arnel Ignacio just visited Kuwait actually about a month ago or 3 weeks ago. And there we found the Kuwaiti authorities to be rather cooperative in terms of solving cases of OFWs. So I'm saying that the challenges are still there, but these days we are aided by technology, and we hope to build on this modern day advantage.
And we can really imagine how that works. But what about we've spoken about the Kuwaiti government wanting to cooperate and trying to cooperate with us to empower us and as well as our OFWs. But what about at the level of OFWs themselves? Are they able, for example, in their everyday lives within their own milieu, are they able to network? Are they able to form communities and support for each other? What's possible at the level of the OFWs where they are in their own communities within the different countries to organize a support system for each other, to bring the whole spirit of bayanihan to bear upon each other's safety?
Yes, Kuwait actually, by virtue of the standard contract, is one country where OFWs can be provided or should be provided days off every week, and of course vacation once a year. So there is time to blend or socialize with fellow OFWs and community members. When we talk to the family of OFW Ranara, for instance, they were talking about how there were fellow OFWs who actually had befriended OFW Ranara, other OFWs who live next door or in the same neighborhood. So there are chances and there is relative freedom to socialize and to merge with other OFWs. But I think to dig deeper on this matter, I think what we need to enhance in this particular case is the information with respect to how to seek help. And we will start asking questions with respect to the recruitment agency as to how it properly informed OFW Ranara on the ways in which she can seek help or redress when something goes wrong. So we will dig deeper and find out and again engage the Kuwaiti authorities in enhancing information in terms of helplines from the Philippine side, and there are helplines from the Philippine side and helplines on the Kuwaiti side as well.
Yusek, when this bilateral agreement was being worked out, we were told that it was going to be extensive. It will provide wide protection for Filipinos in Kuwait. So now what are you seeing? Which areas can use some enhancement? What reforms are still possible? Because despite all this protection, Jollibee still suffered this brutal fate.
Yes, I think we need to enhance information and the campaign to protect our domestic workers. Somehow I believe the occurrences in the past have made an impact, and Kuwaiti society and culture in general may already have improved in a sense with the previous experiences. However, I am not saying in any way that the situation is perfect or there is no room for improvement. We have to intensify our efforts to educate not just our workers prior to departure, but also Kuwaiti employers. And Secretary Toots had also given the directive along these lines. By way of example, Secretary Toots has asked us to develop a country-specific video or information materials so that Kuwaiti employers can better understand Philippine culture and OFW rights and protective measures and ways in which OFWs and their employers can resolve their differences amicably. So these are among the things that we will roll out in 2023 to make sure that we keep the employers on board. Of course, the recruitment agencies have a big role to play here as well. And when Administrator Ignacio and I spoke to the Kuwaiti recruitment agencies, we had encouraged them to seek out the better protection of our workers, to facilitate the filing of cases against abusive employers, and to repatriate those who are already able to be safely repatriated.
Well, after what happened, people are again suggesting that we should suspend deployment to Kuwait, but I understand the government is against it. Well, at this point, why is this? What's behind this decision?
Well, I think what is needed at this stage is because we're coming from a bilateral labor agreement context. First and foremost, Secretary Toots has asked us to look into the salient provisions of the bilateral labor agreement and engage the Kuwaiti side in a revisiting of this agreement. As mentioned, it expired last year prior to the elections. And second, to tighten our recruitment standards to make sure that only those with a superior track record, with a clean track record, could be able to recruit OFWs for Kuwait. And then, of course, as mentioned, the information drive and the campaigns to further educate Kuwaiti employers should also be heightened because that too is key here, especially in the context of OFW Ranara's case.
Yusek, one last question na lang po. We've talked about Jollibee, Ranara, her case. We've zoomed out. We've talked about OFWs in Kuwait in general. We've talked about the safety and security of OFWs in general. Final question is to you naman po, dyan sa department. It's only been a few months. Pero kamusta po ang DMW? What are the early pain points? What are the early lessons? And what are the early wins for this young department?
Yes, I think I wouldn't call it pain points, but I would call it transition challenges that we have been going through. Effective January 1, we had been fully constituted. We have a budget for 2023. We have our staffing pattern, and we have our rules and regulations to implement our charter. However, all three are still yet to be seen in terms of effectivity and full implementation. So in the case of the staffing pattern, for instance, we are set to fill up 1,000 vacancies. We have the staffing pattern, but we need the warm bodies to fill up 1,000 vacancies. In the case of the budget, we do have a 4.1 billion budget, but we were seeking out around 7 to 8 billion, at least for starters. So we are starting with a sufficient budget, yes, the ideal budget that we wanted. Although there will be a 1.2 billion legal assistance and medical assistance fund out of this 4.1 billion. So the challenges are there, the very high expectations are there, and the main challenge really is how to meet those very high expectations given our budget. And we're the youngest department in government, and we are indeed going through the birth pains, but we will overcome all these because with the system and the plans that SecTools have laid with our team, all it takes really is strong teamwork and systems in place to help and enhance our protective measures, such as, for instance, digitalization that we're embarking on, that hopefully will be one of our handiest tools to keep us abreast with our mandate and with the high expectations.
Okay. Yusek Kakdak, sir, maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Yusek.
Salamat po. Thank you for having me.
Department of Migrant Workers Undersecretary Hans Leo Kakdak. And we will start up another conversation after this break. Keep it here on One News.
Pinanindigan ngayon ang bagong modus sa Bilibid. Promotor daw niya ng mismo mga jail guard gamit ang e-wallet. Ang modus na yan, kinumpirma ni Acting Bureau Chief Gregorio Katapang Jr.
Justice Secretary Boying Remulla says that Gregorio Katapang Jr.'s appointment as Corrections Chief will soon be permanent.
Kapag-usapan na namin ang permanent appointment ni General Katapang at we expect it anytime.
Malacanang is set to permanently appoint former AFP Chief of Staff Gregorio Katapang Jr. as the new Director General of the Bureau of Corrections. Let's talk to General Katapang himself. Sir, welcome back to the Chiefs.
Good evening.
Good evening, General.
Yes, good evening po sa inyong lahat.
Alam niyo naman po, dati tuwing i-guest namin kayo, kung hindi namin alam kung ano-anong kaso yung tatanungin namin dyan sa Believe It or Not. But this time around, we want to start with the big picture because ma-appoint na nga po kayo. You're gonna be permanent sa lahat po ng problema pinag-usapan natin. Now that you can afford to sit and to really lead with a term, where do you start and what are the priorities for you, sir, given this mandate?
First of all, I want to present the 5-year modernization plan of Bucor to the Secretary so that they will know the way ahead starting this year, 2023, up to 2028. And this will affect a lot of changes, but improvement in the Bucor.
Bigyan niyo lang po muna kami ng wag muna yung the entire 5-year plan, but gave us 1 or 2 pang headline ni Ami bukas sa Philippine Star. I mean, if you were to boil it down to just 2 words, what are the top 2 concerns for you that urgently need reform at the Bureau of Corrections?
Of course, the congestion and the change of values of our Bucor personnel.
Ano po ibig sabihin niya by change of values?
Kaya na nga.
Talaga pong maraming hard-headed sa Bucor. So talagang hopefully through carrot and stick, I will be able to influence the situation that is happening now.
General, sa hirap ng problema dyan, there are some suggestions. Gayahin nyo daw yung PNP sa yung DILG, maghingi din kayo ng courtesy resignations. Are you looking at this possibility?
Mahirap po mag-courtesy resignation sila kasi wala pa silang retirement benefits. So wala sa kanila magre-retire. Kasi nga, di ba po lahat ng uniform personnel were removed from the SSS pension fund. So I cannot force them to retire because they have no pension to talk about. So what I'll do now is really to weed out the bad eggs in Bucor.
So paano yun? Considering yung latest ninyong problema ngayon, yung e-wallet, napakaraming involved. How will you weed out? Baka walang matira dyan.
Ay, yun po ang ina-expect ko kung talagang magmamatigas po yung mga employees. Anyway, meron akong bagong dugo o bagong mga Bucor recruits. They are about 2,345. They can become the backbone of the new Bucor that we all envision to see in the future.
So what you're actually doing is you'll be removing people for cause. Hindi kayo hihingi ng courtesy resignation. Talagang tatanggalin niyo sila dahil ayaw niyo na. Meron talagang dahilan para tanggalin sila.
Yeah, they will be relieved for cause or removed from office for cause because of violations of regulations.
Sir, pwede isa-isahin natin yun. I want to start on the, sabi niyo, carrot and stick. Ano yung carrot? On the side of what you can offer by way of incentives, ano po yung possible doon?
Yung carrot, as of now, I was informed by CSC that there are about 145 vacant positions, no, that I can give to the Bucor officials who are making good and promote them to that position, no, higher promotion. But those who are really hard-headed, they will have to be removed from the service.
What about napag-usapan din po natin doon, no? So isa-isahin na natin yung mga reforms na matagal nyo na nga sinabi. What about itong usapin na ipaghiwa-hiwalay na yung mga facilities, build regional prisons? Ano po is this more realistic for you now? And ano na po ang timeline dito?
Yeah, that is part of the 5-year roadmap. This year, I will be decongesting the new Bilibid prison by transferring about 7,500 inmates to the regional prison areas, which is in Davao, in Palawan, and in Leyte. Each of them will be receiving about 2,500 inmates. Because based on our modernization plan, if you build a prison facility, that prison facility should only accommodate 2,500 per that facility. It will be a 10-hectare facility, and it will be cemented fence or wall, and they are put inside that wall, and they only move around within that area. And, but they have enough space, in as much as we are now only putting in about 2,500 PDLs.
Obviously po, we've had a lot of time, a lot of experience, a lot of experiments, and even a lot of bad experience and bad lessons from Bilibid itself. As we go to regional prisons, and essentially you can start from scratch, di ba? Parang fresh piece of paper. What are some important lessons in terms of design, in terms of also the software, in terms of the program, kung saan ipapailalim ang mga preso? What are some lessons to avoid from National Bilibid as we build these regional prisons?
Yeah, first of all, if they are involved in heinous crimes, and they are, let's say they are offenders of rape, murder, or drugs, only 2 persons will stay in a cell. They will not be joining together with other bigger population. So that is level 3. But if they improve on their character, they will go to level 2, and they can be joining about 6 to 8 inmates in a cell. And then if they improve further, and they're just about to be released for parole or pardon, or they have already served their sentence, they will be together with about 15 to 20 cellmates inside the cell.
Well, speaking of character improvement, General, hindi lang mga jail guards ang problema dyan, of course. As we all know, marami din talagang mga sakit sa ulo ng mga prisoners, ano? But the thrust of modern penology is more on corrections, reformation, rehabilitation, rather than punishment, di ba? You think that the current setup is addressing this trust? Or may bala kayo rin na baguhin in the setup?
Yeah, we were given a lecture by Professor Narag, and he told us the way to go. So pag yung inmate or yung PDL talagang hard-headed, he should be staying in a cell, maybe individually, para siyang nakabartolina until he has improved or have shown sign of improvement in character and behavior.
Pero may mga program ba kayo by way of encouraging rehabilitation,
Yes.
faster integration kung sakasakali? kung sakasakaling ma-release sila into the social mainstream? Are you developing programs?
Yes. Together with the Department of Labor and Employment, before they will be released, they will be trained to have, let's say, technical skills so that when they are released, they can be a contributor in the society.
Sir, what about the sustainability of your programs? We're talking about building new facilities, but as we keep discussing every time we guest you and other people involved in our systems, they always point out, yes, the problem is also corruption, but that also ties into low pay. That also ties into us not having all the resources to run everything properly. People, therefore, have to improvise with the systems and the limited resources that we have. So beyond, these really wonderful ideas and more progressive ideas, I guess the question is, are you confident that you will actually have the resources to run the programs, not just build the facilities?
Yeah, I'm confident that we have the resources in as much as we already seek the assistance of the Civil Service Commission, the Bureau of Pardon and Parole, and also the Department of Budget and Management. Now the DPWH is coming in to build the facilities. And what we will be more focused on our side is the reformation program. Because this facilities is beyond us. It has to be enacted by Congress. And we are happy that Congress has recognized our problem. And we expect additional funds to come in as much as the funds to build the facilities will be allocated to the DPWH, and they will be the one to construct the new facilities.
Pero yung mga lupa po, sa inyo na po yun. In Palawan, in Leyte, sa inyo na po yan. There's no issue of even just identifying the area.
Yeah, there's no problem. In fact, after I'm finished with this part of my modernization plan is to make Bucor self-sustaining. There are offers to us that as much as 3.5 billion they can pay rentals in our facilities if we make do or we take advantage of our land and our manpower, in as much as we have PDLs who can provide the labor of whatever investors are coming in.
Ano yung general commercial development ba yun? Are you talking about offers for commercial development or agricultural development ba yan?
It's about joint venture agreements. You see, we can, Secretary Boying is even telling us that we can secularize the new Bilibid prison in Muntinlupa. We have about 300 hectares. Just across the street is the Ayala Alabang. And you know how much per square meter is the cost, the price of a square meter there now is 150,000 per square meter. So the value of our land is really very much appreciated, and it can become a government center where commercial corporations can put up.
The idea
just
po
like
would be
what we did.
the idea po would be to
Gerald Bantag was exploring similar options, di ba? Kumustahin ko na rin, kumusta yung investigation nyo kay Mr. Bantag kasi sabi ng Department of Justice, they're going to ask for hold order against Mr. Bantag and Mr. Solweta. Kumusta na? Are you unearthing more anomalies that might be linked to him?
Yeah, the next thing that I'll be filing against Bantag is the plunder case, because we had a 900 million project, and a lot of money were lost in as much as the project were not finished.
Nalaman niyo ba meron na ba kayong money trail for the 900 million kung ano nangyari?
Yeah, we saw that the funds were released by the previous administration without even conducting post audit. So yung bayad lang tayo ng bayad, but they were just doctoring the documents. So they were able to get away with the money.
Okay. Sir,
Paano yun? Are you asking for help from the Anti-Money Laundering Council, for example? Kasi medyo, kailangan, you have to prove the money trail dyan, to prove plunder.
Yeah. But we will go into that in due time. We will ask the help of the Anti-Money Laundering Commission.
Okay. Sir, we're almost out of time. Balikan ko lang po the things we're considering for raising resources as well. You mentioned the fact that obviously land is a major asset for the Bucor. The model there is to lease out the land, to sell the land, or what? And also, you mentioned also the possibility of factoring in labor of PDLs. How does that factor in? Ano po yung mga models natin when it comes to the land, and what are the models that you are considering when it comes to the PDLs?
Yeah, we have already a model like the Tadeco in Davao. They lease the banana, and we're earning about 30 million pesos a month. But we have a bigger place in Palawan. We also have a nice place in Mindoro and in Leyte, which we can develop into a joint venture agreement with the agri and aqua business, which is badly needed by our country in as much as the prices of food. And this will really help a lot for the food security. Because, you know, in Iwai, we have about 20,000 hectares of rice land. And if we can plant more rice there, we can be rice sufficient and help in the food security of our country.
Tatanim kayong sibuyas, General.
Opo, marami po, pwede.
Sige. Okay. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Bucor Chief Gregorio Katapang Jr. Sir, maraming salamat po.
Thank you, General.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
And that is it for the Chiefs. We hope it was discussed. We'll keep the conversation going. Ako po si Robbie Alampay.
I'm Mami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.